If you love your boxing and your MMA, this is the show for you. Find out extra. Myself, Ade Oladipo, and the great Gareth A. Davies. Today, we're going to reflect on a big win for Naoya Inoue, the Japanese superstar. Finished off TJ Doheny on Tuesday morning to move to 28-0. We'll discuss what next for the pound-for-pound star, with many calling him out now to feature on shows outside of Japan. It's been a big week for talkSPORT. First, His Excellency Turki Alalshikh spoke to us at length. And yesterday, Eddie Hearn popped into the studio for an hour ahead of Anthony Joshua's upcoming fight with Daniel Dubois. We are going to hear from both of them throughout the show. And the big names didn't stop there. We're also going to hear from boxers Ben Shalom, who's been talking to us about linking up with Riyadh season and what the future holds for boxing on Sky Sports. All right, this is Final Extra on talkSPORT 2. Gareth A. Davies, as is tradition, let's not break with tradition. I know you are in France covering the Paralympics. What's that been like? And have you been doing any other bits as well?
Well, not really. I've just been here at the Paralympics, Addy, but it's a lot of travelling around every day. I think I've been to about 8 different venues so far for different things. It's spread out on this amazing, sprawling, beautiful city of light and love. I've managed to see 2 taekwondo gold medalists, watch their semi-finals and finals. Matt Bush and Amy Truesdale. I'm hoping to get them on the show in the next few weeks afterwards. Both gold medalists at the rowing. I've met them. I've been with Sarah Story this morning on the road cycling, her 19th, I think 18th or 19th gold medal, going back 9 games. Just hot-footed it across from the Easter Paris, basically the equivalent of being in Brentwood for 7 in the morning for a road race, and then getting back into the heart of the city, back to hotel studio. It's just really busy. Great Britain have won about 30 goals already. We've got an amazing team. We're second only to China, who've got 65 million disabled people, the same population as the UK. So we're not going to beat them. But it's a festival of light in itself, of triumph for the human spirit. So I'm just here. It's day 7 of action, goes on till day 11. But I did at the equestrian yesterday. I was the only laptop had the boxing on of all the other journos there, because I was watching Naoya Inoue, and I know we'll get into that. But it's been a very busy week tramping around Paris. Not tramping, traveling around Paris. And going to all these events, and it's very, very enlightening and enlivening. How about you?
It's been a nice, relaxed week, actually. It's been a bit of a downtime for me, which has been nice. I've been covering a lot of football on talkSPORT, and it's always nice to, a bit like yourself, covering different sports. Sometimes you don't want to just be pigeonholed into boxing. You want to show that your wings can fly and spread a little bit. So it's been nice to do a bit of deadline day football stuff for talkSPORT, which has been good. But obviously the main focus has been on the boxing. And like you said, I had the laptop open yesterday as well, watching Inoue at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, beat TJ Doheny. Obviously, look, an unfortunate stoppage in the way in which the fight ended, but it seemed like it was going one way for me anyway. Inoue started to go through the gears, I felt like. And TJ Doheny seemed to be, I think, come sort of round 5-6 on that survival mode, and just, okay, how do I deal with this on-rushing swarm of punches that Inoue was throwing at him? What did you make of Inoue? Obviously, the discussions will start, and we're going to have so many discussions about where he is in the pound-for-pound rankings. But what did you make of just his performance overall?
It wasn't the best thing I've seen from him, but he was a massive favourite. Obviously, TJ Doheny was a big underdog in this fight. And I think Inoue's overconfidence was kind of showing. He was just planting his feet. We saw a little bit of movement early on, a bit of dancing. He's a great mover, of course. But I also think he got hit a lot more than we usually see. Doheny landed, I looked at the stats earlier, 26 body punches, which I thought he was taking more than usual. And for the first few rounds, he did keep Inoue at bay. But then, coming into the 6th round, I think Inoue threw 61 punches And Inoue himself, of course, landed 31 body punches, 30 power punches in that 6th round. And then that leg was hurt at the end of the 6th round. And then 4 power punches in the opening seconds of the 7th, and it was all over. But you've got to say, at the very least, and there was a kind of punch to the hip, wasn't there? But
yeah,
it was very dominant. We expected him to win. Doheny was a target because he'd had 3 fights in Japan heading into this fight, so the Japanese fans knew who he was. And the big question is, people are saying, "Oh, does he still belong in the top 3 pound for pound?" You can't judge him on that performance. I don't think he's aging. I just think it was a fight that mentally he didn't have to get up for too much, and it reflected in his performance.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. It's almost as though, I think disdain's the wrong word, but he had little respect, I felt, for what was coming back from Doheny. It was almost like, okay, this is just one of those fights where I'm going to just get rid of you. I don't really care what's coming back. And that's probably why he got hit a lot more than we expected. But for me, still very much a top 3 pound for pound in whichever order, right? I mean, Crawford, Usyk, in Inoue. There's been so many discussions after the fight about whether or not he needs to fight away from Japan. Who next? On the fight away from Japan thing, I mean, we have a fighter here that's a rock star in Japan, right? He sells out stadiums over there and makes millions of pounds or dollars or whatever. Why does he need to fight away from Japan? Like, what's the rush to see him in a Vegas or a Saudi or even a London? Does that need to happen for his own legacy?
I think he's already got a legacy, a very strong legacy in Japan. I mean, the fight before this, I think there were 55,000 people turn out to see him.
Yeah.
Fight Lewis Neary in Tokyo. I think it's a legacy that's being foisted on him. I think if we talk about the Saudi Arabians, well, Bob Arum obviously has said in the ring after the fight that he wanted him to come to Las Vegas to fight next without mentioning an opponent. Turki Alalshikh, His Excellency, Turki Alalshikh has said, "I don't like these 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning fights. But it's inevitable in different time zones." And I did write a column after and I just say, Vegas is a good plan. Turki Alalshikh wants him to start getting into that promotional family that he's been building for a year now. My feeling is that he's probably got 5 or 6 fights left. There's nothing wrong with him fighting in Vegas again. I think he's a bigger name than he was when he fought there before. He fought in Glasgow. Saw 2 rounds of 2 to 3 rounds of the beautiful brutality that he does have, and people didn't really know who he was. I wrote a column after Neary saying, here's arguably the number 1 pound for pound in the world who no one knows outside the die-hard hardcore boxing fans and observers. He should be celebrated more, and I think if he was headlining on a stacked Riyadh season card that included a lot of Americans and Brits in really exciting fights on the undercard, then it would make him a bigger name. It's all down to him. He favours Aladdin, so all I'll say is maybe it's time to get the genie out of the bottle.
I like it. I like that line. He's a super bantamweight king, right? I mean, that's the division or junior featherweight, whichever way you want to do it, 122 pounds. The next step is 126. So the questions, I guess, now is, does he stay at 122 and almost circle the block and look for opponents that he's either just missed or that he's beaten? Or does he go up to 126 where maybe there are names that the general public know a bit more? And then you can have that fight in Vegas or in Riyadh. So the 126, the featherweight guys like Nick Ball, Lee Wood is still there, Ray Vargas, Angelo Leo. Again, names that the general public, whether it be in the UK or America, know more. I think he can beat all those guys, by the way. But it makes for more exciting fights when people know who he's fighting. And this is not to discredit anything he's done or the guys at 122 or below that 118, 115. But I do feel like he might just need to take a risk going up another weight class to beat someone that we all like, okay, I know that name. and then it just makes for an easier fight for the general boxing casual fans to get involved with.
Yeah, I mean, I've already nailed my colours to the mast on this. I think Nick Ball is a great matchup for him.
It's a good one, isn't it? It's a very good fight.
Yeah, it's just it's going to be a great fight.
Nick Ball's energetic and he's 100 miles per hour. It's a good fight, yeah.
Yeah, and also he's a guy that is growing in resonance with British fans. People know that he's had those great fights in recent times. He's a he beat Ray Ford. I thought he was very unlucky not to win the world title against Ray Vargas. We all know that. Ray Vargas, another guy. I mean, I'd like to see him in against Nick Ball. That's my call. But there are people around, and it's got to be a world title. I think he might want one fight that is at featherweight. I mean, there's Tomoki Kameda, who's the IBF number 3 in the rankings. But if he's going to go to Vegas, does that mean he's going to step up against like a Bruce Carrington, who's promoted by Bob Arum? Does he fight I don't know. I don't know who he fights, frankly, at Super Feather. There's a few Brits around. There's Liam Davis around, but it's a difficult
Super Feather. At what Super Feather? Jumping 2 weight classes.
At Super Bantam.
Okay.
I think he should go up to feather, in my view, and just try and do it there, unless he just wants to defend the undisputed crown. He's got Sam Goodman, Alan Picasso, great name, by the way, an artist in the ring. Akhmadaliev is there.
That's the one. That's the one
I
Eddie
think
wants.
so, maybe. Is that who you like?
Akhmadaliev. Yeah, that's the one that Eddie promotes, and he's the champion, and he's dangerous. And I think that's the one that Eddie wants, and I think that's the one that Turkey probably wants as well.
Stylistically, it's brilliant.
Yeah, look, he's got options. He's a pound-for-pound star. He's got options. Or he can just stay in Japan and do what he's been doing for the last few years. And again, as I say, sell out arenas, sell out stadiums, and not care about the time zone for anyone else in the world because it works for them over there, and he's a big star over there. We'll see what he does. One thing Bob has says, though, very quickly, is that he will potentially fight either the back end of this year or early next year. So if it is the back end of this year, that's a pound-for-pound star that's having 4 fights in 12 months, which, again, needs to be applauded because the other pound-for-pound guys, as we know, aren't doing that. They're doing 1 fight a year, maximum twice a year. Here we have a pound-for-pound star in the peak of his powers, giving us 4 fights in 12 months, and I think that needs to be looked at a bit more. All right, you're listening to Find Out Extra on talkSPORT 2. Still to come, we are going to hear from Eddie Hearn on the upcoming AJ versus Dubois fight, and we'll hear what Ben Shalom has had to say about boxers' involvement in Riyadh season. But up next, we're going to hear from His Excellency Turki Alalshikh, who's called into talkSPORT to talk about his own involvement in British boxing. Welcome back. You're listening to Find Out Extra on talkSPORT 2. Ade Oladipo, the great Gareth A. Davies. His Excellency Turki Alalshikh called in to talkSPORT early this week for a discussion with Jim White and Simon Jordan. Before we listen to that, Gareth, it's good that is now what it looks on the outside looking in to be mended. That talkSPORT and Saudi Arabia Riyadh season, His Excellency Turki Alalshikh, because as we know, look, we both work for talkSPORT, and talkSPORT I think do so much when it comes to boxing, and I think it's going to go bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think it's important that everyone gets sort of on side, if you like, and on the same side. So this is good that at least it seems like bridges are being mended.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we work in very similar pathways in the industry, and we've said for a long time it's what talkSPORT can do for the promotion of big events, and there's the fight fan listens to talkSPORT, so to have the whatever fissures or divides were there in the past healed is a very, very good thing, and obviously we know ourselves that there's an enormous reach, and if all the promoters are working together, all the broadcasters should be working together, and that includes radio and television. So it's very good news.
Yeah, fantastic news, and obviously it's good news as well to know that talkSPORT will be at the AJ versus Dubois fight card. And this is where we got talking with His Excellency Turki Alalshikh. This is what he had to say about funding fights on British soil.
First of all, give me another way to clean and fix the system. I am with you. We are spending a lot, yes, but this is what is necessary to build our name and clean the system and fix the system. In the future, I think even the price of the fighters is too high.
Agreed.
And the generation of the fighters who are getting a lot of money now is a couple of people. We have Tyson, we have Usyk, we have Joshua, we have, they less than 10%.
No, but it's across the board, Turkey. I mean, I know what you played people like Nick Ball, and they wouldn't get that anywhere else if they weren't fighting on an undercut. And I have no problem with it. My worry is that, like, for example, Fraser Clark and Fabio Wardley shouldn't have to fight a domestic fight, which are a British fight between world title fights in Vegas or in Riyadh or in Madison Square Garden. No problem. But I'm looking further down the pyramid and say, why does Fraser Clark and Fabio Wardley have to fight in Riyadh? I know why they have to fight, because the economics are so significant they can't turn it down. But that's a British domestic fight that ultimately should be able to be fought on these shores. So that's why I get slightly concerned about the long-term future. But I do agree with you. If you clean up this sport and deal with the Wild West that's there, because you've tried it in football, you can't buy football. The Saudis can't buy football. You can't buy golf. But you can buy boxing because it's the Wild West.
And clean it up.
And I think you'll be a force for good.
His Excellency there speaking to Simon Jordan and Jim White. Firstly, do you think, and I was just thinking this, obviously, look, we were in LA, the BMO Stadium for Terence Crawford Madrimov, and that had, and by the way, incredible atmosphere. Everything about that night was fantastic, but it was only 20-odd thousand in there. There's going to be near 100 at Wembley Stadium, near 100. Do you think he'll be shocked and surprised by just the magnitude of that event?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the whole Riyadh season, well, apart from the fact that they are underwriting it and it's a Riyadh season edition card and it wouldn't happen without them. It could happen without them, but it isn't happening without them. We know that huge fights in the UK can generate massive numbers. They want to break the record here. They've asked for an augmented license for like over 96,000. I think they'll be really ambitious once they've seen it. It's an incredible stadium to be at for a boxing event. I don't know how many I've been to now. As was Tottenham Hotspur, as was the Millennium Stadium, frankly. The 7-8 stadium fights, 7 or 8 that we've had with Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury in the last decade, and obviously the one with Froch and Groves back in 2014, I think it was now, have shown us that there is an attitude and an aptitude for giant stadium fights in the UK when the right fights are in place, and it's largely the heavyweights. I just think it'll fuel their ambition, Eddie, the Saudi Arabian ambition. It'll fuel their ambition to try and generate similar atmospheres in their own territories. So only good things will come from it, in my view. It's a massive moment in time. I'm not surprised Eddie Hearn is really chuffed about it. He's done some huge fights there. Frank Warren, of course, with Tyson Fury and Dillian White, created another major moment. So, I mean, it's a very exciting prospect to be going into that fight week. Excuse me. I think the whole week will be fantastic. I think there'll be a lot written front, middle, and back, and I think there'll be broadcast teams. We'll be doing a lot on it. It's going to be enormous.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible, and it's almost gone up another level now with the inclusion of Liam Gallagher, especially when you hear about the announcement of Oasis and now reforming. It's almost perfect timing that Oasis have reformed, and yet Liam Gallagher is going to play out a few songs very similar to what Eminem did. In LA, Liam Gallagher is going to do a few songs as well that night. So the night just got bigger. If you felt like it couldn't get bigger, it's now gone even bigger.
Well, I mean, I'm hearing behind the scenes, I don't know if it's out there, that His Excellency is trying to persuade them to come together for the first time,
Yes.
even at that event, Liam
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Noel. So, it's great. I mean, promoters are coming together, family internecine sibling rivalries being healed. What more do we want? But I know there's more to talk about on this, so I'll let you lead me into it.
There is one of the big talking points that came out of this interview between Turkey and Simon and Jim was about fighter pay. But it's funny, right? Because when you think fighter pay, you think of the negative connotations because of when you hear fighter pay, you think of UFC and Dana White underpaying. And this was a discussion about overpaying, which is quite rare in the sport of boxing. Undercard fighters getting overpaid. But I guess that there is probably a problem with this because it kind of distorts the market, doesn't it? The market value of a fighter. And he spoke about this as well, and Simon spoke about this. And look, he admitted, and you heard it there, that he probably is overpaying. And you've kind of, I guess, early in your development into sport, you've maybe got to overpay a little bit. Do you almost feel like this is going to be a problem going forward, or is it something that's almost going to smooth itself out after a year or 18 months or so?
Well, I agree with you on what you just said, but I'll use different words for it. I mean, obviously, Simon's a money man. Money is part of his thing. His, what he always talks about, because obviously football and money go hand in hand. He's not wrong on that. And as you say, His Excellency Turki Alalshikh does agree with him on that. But any startup, if you call it that, is going to want major investment, and he explained it that their goal is to try and draw a new generation, which goes along with this lower fee for pay-per-view fights, or keeping it at £20 for British fans. It's a big market for them, the UK, because obviously it's a huge fan. There's a huge fan base in the UK that can still be stimulated. That whole football market, football fans coming to the big fights, and I think. When it comes to boxing, having been involved in it a long time, some people come along who draw extraordinary interest from the public and earn more naturally. It's Machiavellian, isn't it? Market forces will always dictate what people are paid. Yes, it is inflated at the moment, but and it will recede because they're not going to be giving this amount of money out forever. That they will want it to be self-sustaining in lots of ways. If it isn't, then we are going to see a drop. We see recessions in things. That is market economy. They are investing in a sport that they believe in, that he believes in at the moment. So it will naturally play out. I mean, I think you can't say there's too much money being paid to boxers, because boxers should earn as much as they possibly can at any time they're possibly fighting. It's a brutal, visceral, unforgiving business in which people give parts of themselves, literally parts of themselves, in order to earn money for their families and themselves. So, when the money is there, you've got to take it. And it is there at the moment. And I think that there will be a drop-off, I think, at some point. But we'll have to deal with that when we come to it. Hopefully by then, boxing is back in a self-sustaining place, because fans know that the best fights are going to be made, Eddie. And, they've got the Super League idea. So if it does work, it'll be brilliant. If it doesn't, we will just move to the next iteration of it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. If there's money to be made, the fighter should be making it. It's that simple. Because as you say, it isn't always there. So when it is there, take it and make as much as you can, because this is the most dangerous sport in the world. And they do leave a bit of themselves in the ring all the time. Even the greatest fighters do. You spoke about pay-per-view, and he spoke about it as well. Let's hear what Turki Alalshikh had to say about his strategy regarding pay-per-view prices.
I think, as an example, I will give you an example. I prefer to have a 1 million subscribe and pay-per-view with £20.
Then 500,000 with 40. I agree. Yeah.
Or less than 500,000. Now with technology and with a lot of things in the social media, the people go around it illegally. Some people, because the price is high, and this is in the future will not build the boxing. If I give the customers good fight
Yeah.
with good price,
You'll get volume.
I will increase the fan space, and in the future we will go step by step.
Very interesting this, just because we know that the average price over here is 20 quid. It's kind of flirted up to 25 in recent years with the big AJ fights and the Fury fights. But I'm more interested about what he said about the price worldwide, because he spoke about the price worldwide and trying to lower that to $20, which I find intriguing, because I've always felt like the American pay-per-view price model is crazy, like bananas. $90, $100, $75. It's just whatever. It's just a stupid amount. Is that even possible? Because the American market's been so overinflated over the years, how possible is it to bring that down to $20? Considering, again, like Canelo's fight against Berlanga is on DAZN, and I think that's $79.99.
Yeah, I mean, it is weird that we're paying £20 here generally, like you say, or £25 sometimes, $24.99, and they are paying those extraordinary figures. I think it reached its peak with Pacquiao and Mayweather
and Conor and Floyd as well.
Conor and Floyd, which was about $100, I think it was.
yeah, it was $100.
Yeah, I know, and we've had this conversation in many press rooms and with many fans when we're over there, that you really have to pay that much, and they do. I think it will stop more piracy. I think it will lessen piracy, and if they can set that benchmark for around the world, I think it will draw more fans. I think it will, but it's certainly a fascinating strategy that, again, no television network, no streaming service in America could have set that limit. And if it's successful, it could be one of the big coups. Like you say, I thought that immediately as well. Wow, the Americans are going to enjoy that. You know, and it's a good thing that they are thinking about it all the time. They're devising ways to try or strategizing on how to bring more fans back to the market with the biggest fights, make it price worthy. And as you know, they want to try and get it on one platform globally as well, which is a great idea.
Yeah, good news as well for fight fans about Bivol Beterbiev, because we've been told that one's going to be £15 in the UK, and they're trying to do $15 worldwide. So let's not say they're not trying, because they certainly are. All right, you're listening to Find It Extra on talkSPORT 2. Next up, we are going to hear more from His Excellency Turki Alalshikh, and we're going to hear from Eddie Hearn, who's talking all things AJ versus Dubois. Welcome back. You're listening to Find It Extra on talkSPORT 2. Ade Oladipo, the great Gareth Davies. All right, let's get straight into a bit of audio here. Eddie Hearn was in the studio with Simon Jordan and Jim White. This is what he had to say about AJ's upcoming fight against Daniel Dubois.
Forget it's two Brits fighting for the world heavyweight title. It's just a great heavyweight matchup. One thing you want in a heavyweight fight is power, speed, form, and these guys have got it all. Like, there is no doubt that this is the most dangerous time to be fighting Daniel Dubois. Coming off Jarrell Miller, which, I think was a credible win, but coming off the Hrgovic win, Dubois is in full flow. And so is AJ. So, you've got a very young guy in Daniel Dubois. It's going to be really interesting to see how he deals with the moment, because for AJ, these nights are bread and butter. And I know that Dubois has boxed Usyk in Poland, but this is different. Walking out 96,000, the plans that His Excellency has for Fight Week is going to blow your mind. I mean, I don't want to give it away, but it's going to be such a huge moment for Daniel Dubois that you have to be made of the right stuff all week. The pressure, the build-up, particularly on fight night, the ring walk, the moment. Yeah. And I think with Daniel, whatever the game plan is, will probably unravel very quickly, which might make him even more dangerous, because he might just go for it. Do you know what I mean? But I think both guys, they have a little bit of history, they know each other, but they're just in form. And when I look back at AJ against Deontay Wilder, we never got that fight, but this actually has similarities. Both guys are massive punchers. Both guys are fast, and both guys have the ability to turn your lights out at any moment.
He's said there, Gareth, as you heard, that this is the most dangerous time to fight Daniel Dubois. Agree or disagree? Agree or disagree? Agree?
I agree. Dubois got momentum. He's looked very good since the Usyk defeat, the Alexander Usyk defeat in Poland, which we were at, of course, and he grew from that. He grew against Gerald Miller. He grew against Filip Hrgović particularly. And it all depends on how he carries the big week. It's going to be an enormous week for him. It's going to be a lot of pressure because Anthony Joshua knows these big stadium fights, even though there's more pressure on Anthony Joshua than there is on Daniel Dubois to deliver. So it is a dangerous time to fight him, because if he gets his mindset right, he's got nothing to lose there. Even though he's the IBF champion, stripped off Usyk. So we can get into that in a minute, but or maybe we'll get into it closer to fight week. But it is a dangerous time. I agree.
Yeah, and I think the one benefit, or look, he has a few benefits, Daniel Dubois. I think a couple of good benefits is that he's done a Riyadh season card twice now. Obviously, Gerald Miller and Filip Hrgović. So he's used to all the media requirements every single day, the grand arrivals, the press conference, the public workout, the other presser. So he's done all that. So he's used to it. And he's fought in a big stadium when he fought Alexander Usyk.
Yeah,
yes, in defeat.
But different scrutiny, though, Ade, this time. Different scrutiny headlining the card against Joshua. Bigger scrutiny. He's going to be under 10 times as much pressure, I think.
Yeah, and no, I think you're right. I think you're right. Back home in London, he's going to be way more. But I think all the pressure is on AJ, because AJ has to win. Yeah, I think Dubois. Not that Dubois doesn't have to win, because you don't want to lose, but he's 26. He can come again. If AJ loses, I mean, I don't know if they're ready to do another rebuild job on AJ. One other thing that Eddie Hearn said was that there are similarities to this fight as there would have been with AJ versus Wilder, in the sense that both are punchers. There is this whoever lands first kind of notion going around. Do you agree with that?
They're both explosive finishers. I mean, all three, rather, are explosive finishers. So the trouble is, I'm thinking about this version of Wilder and this version of AJ right now. I think 5 years ago, it was a different fight.
Yes,
very dangerous fight for AJ, because Wilder was
frighteningly dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, but it does. It's not a fight you see going 12 rounds, which you don't think, and also you feel that with AJ and Wilder. The danger for AJ against Wilder was he kept on finding a way of inching in and landing his big shots by about rounds 5, 6, 7 against a lot of fighters. This is more of a boxing match against Dubois, and it's going to be a battle of the jab and who detonates the right hand best, in my view. But it's a fascinating fight, really is.
No, it has a bit of everything. I love it. I can't wait for it as well. I think as we've got closer to it, I think when it was first announced or even first mentioned or murmured, I think a lot of people are like, AJ wins this one. Now, as we've got closer, there's definitely been a bit of a swing towards Dubois. Still AJ, a big favorite, and the majority of the people picking AJ, but there's definitely some, not just fight fans, but those sort of that cover the sport that are actually picking Dubois to cause the upset. All right, let's hear from His Excellency again, Turki Alalshikh, who's spoken about the AJ Fury fight. He loves this fight. He's desperate to make this fight. And he said he will make this fight ahead of any trilogy with either fighter and Usyk. This is what he had to say.
If everything go right, first of all, Dubois has a chance, very big chance, and it is not easy. If you talk with me as a fan, I think it is difficult fight for Joshua and dangerous fight for Joshua. Okay, but if the winner of Tyson and Usyk, like I will give you like example, if Usyk win, still I want to see Joshua against Tyson if they accept. I will not try to do the third fight before having Tyson and Joshua.
Yeah, look, he's desperate to make this fight, but I'm when he starts speaking about AJ Fury or AJ Usyk or Fury Usyk, I always get I always get nervous because I'm like, there is a Daniel Dubois element to this. And let's not look over Daniel Dubois and talk about AJ-Fury yet. Like, I would rather this conversation and the conversations he's having about trilogy fights either way to happen after the 21st. Because I do feel like if I'm Daniel Dubois and I hear this type of audio, it gives me the extra 1 or 2% I need to really go ham in the gym. And I just feel like it's a dangerous thing to overlook fighters. And I feel that there's an element of overlooking Daniel Dubois when we talk about AJ-Fury now. Again,
Well,
22nd of September, I'm okay with. Now, I'm not too sure.
Well, as Turki Alalshikh said on live on air, he was. I remember the moment when he said, "Maybe I'm a little bit guilty of trying to jump ahead before these fights." He said, "I know it's gone wrong a couple of times on things I've said, so I hope it goes right on this." I think the big question, like I said, he wants AJ Fury. We all want AJ versus Fury, ahead of a trilogy with Usyk or for either man. But the problem is both AJ and Fury, I think, have to win to make it a big fight. It's still a big fight if they both lose, and how they lose is important if they lose. And obviously we're going to have to, we're there on the 21st of September, then we're going to have to wait 3 months for the outcome of Fury Usyk 2. If they both lose, it becomes it's not as big a fight. It's not as marketable. If they both lose on points or if they both lose on stoppage, it's a very different fight. So once again, we sit waiting to see 2 semi-finals that could go either way. And this is heavyweight boxing, so they could easily go the other way. Fury is very capable of beating Usyk in the second fight. AJ is very capable of beating Daniel Dubois, but that's laid plans and all that.
Is there? This is why, as much as I love rematches, and I think they're important when it comes to contract negotiation, if there was no rematch for Fury versus Usyk, then AJ walks straight into Fury. Fury literally sits it out into the new year, and AJ fights Fury in the new year. But obviously, he's got a Mr. Alexander Usyk to get in front of, and I think that's a big problem. A big problem.
But finally, I mean, it's a bit like that. Boxing doesn't have a schedule. This is one of the issues with it. The algorithm is broken. There isn't one that you've got to be light of it. Anthony Joshua, if he beats Daniel Dubois, will be called a 3-time heavyweight champion of the world. And this isn't a criticism of Anthony Joshua. It's a criticism of the system, because this has happened for a lot of different people. But the truth is, Alexander Usyk was the IBF champion. I know he relinquished the title, but he would have been stripped of it, and it would have been given to someone else. So and maybe he has earned the right, beating Otto Wallin and Francis Ngannou and Robert Helenius and Franklin, Jermaine Franklin. But there's aspects to boxing that are always manufactured, and we accept it and we put up with it, because it just creates those headlines for us. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
He is a 3-time world champion if he beats Daniel Dubois. And it's great that we've got the prospect of things happening next year, which is, the biggest fight in boxing, which is Fury and Joshua. But the system is not always perfect. I think maybe we just have to put up with that at times.
Yeah, this is boxing. As I think you've said, and I think many have echoed, it's the wild, wild west. There is no system. It's actually who turns up with the biggest guns wins the battles. It's a bit screwed. But again, it's the sport we love, and sometimes I think we love it because of its chaotic mess. Sometimes, all right, you listen to find
nuances, isn't it? It's just weird nuances. Then we just
someone coming from the outside looking in will think, what is going on? Like, what is going on? And I think Turkey's sort of seeing that now for himself, whether it be promoters or sanctioning bodies, governing bodies. He's actually seeing that firsthand, because it must be quite crazy. But hey, this is the sport of boxing. All right, you're listening to Find It Extra on talkSPORT 2. Up next, we're going to hear from another one of the top promoters in this country. That man is Mr. Ben Shalom.
Does Ben, and I'm sure he'd admit this, sometimes go through the motions in fights? Mm-hmm. Does he sometimes entertain so much that maybe it's not as clinical sometimes as in every single fight. But go through Mike Tyson, go through Nassim Hamed, go through Muhammad Ali, and tell me that every single one of their fights was an absolute game changer and a knockout. That just doesn't happen, and he can knock people out.
Welcome back to Final Extra on talkSPORT 2. Ade Oladipo, the great Gareth A. Davies. All right, Ben Shalom. I feel like Gareth has been on the outside looking in when it comes to these Riyadh season cards, but of recent, they've opened the door to him, and he has come in, right? I mean, you look at this fight card coming up October 12th. He has a number of fighters on that card. He has Fraser Clark. He has Ben Whitaker. He has Chris Eubank Jr. Even the card coming up September 12th, he's got fighters on that card as well. Joshua Boatsy being one of them. So finally, he's been allowed in. And I like this. I like this because for me, this shouldn't be a case of one promoter dominating Riyadh season. It should be all promoters coming together, almost a bit like a massive WrestleMania or Super Bowl. So I'm happy for Ben to almost be allowed in because he has fighters that I think we want to see on these fight cards. Ben Whitaker, I can't wait to see. Eubank Jr. will get to him in a minute. And Fraser Clark, Fabio Wardley, is going to be an incredible heavyweight fight. So it's good that he's in.
Yeah, and I think he's got 4 fighters, hasn't he, on the October 12th Riyadh season card. Obviously headlined by the extraordinary fight we're going to have for the undisputed light heavyweight title between Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, which I genuinely, I've been waiting for this fight for at least 2 or 3 years. I'm so excited about it. And it will go under the radar in the mainstream as well. Look, I think, again, Turki Alalshikh has done a great job in bringing the British promoters together. Again, if the money dries up, the friendships will dry up as well in terms of. But it will because they'll become more rivals again. At the moment, they're all feeding from the same pot and from the same dish. You know, the table is rotating and people are taking food off the table and it's rotating and everyone's getting their look in. But yeah, it's fascinating. I'm pleased for him as well because it also brings Sky Sports into play along with TNT and DAZN, so it gets all the broadcasters involved as well. So I'm really pleased about it.
Yeah, this is what he had to say about one of his charges that fights on the October 12th card. I mean, I think one of the most exciting boxers, not just in this country, but in the world. This is what he had to say about Ben Whitaker. Ben Whitaker, who fights Liam Cameron on this fight card. Liam Cameron coming off a split decision loss to Lyndon Arthur. I think everyone in the world is excited about Ben Whitaker. His social media is just now going through the absolute roof. His numbers are just ridiculous, by the way. Every time I refresh Instagram, he's gone up by a couple of 100,000. So he's very, very popular. Look, we all, I think, want to see him moved quickly, but Ben was quite smart in his answers about how fast he should be moved. And he's talking about, you know, potentially British title fights next year, European title fights. He's not going to rush him, is he? Which, look, some of us think he's ready to be rushed. Ben probably knows him better than we do. He doesn't want to rush him, and he wants to take baby steps. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of pressure to rush him very soon.
Well, look, he's up against a guy with, 29 pro fights. And his 6 losses have never been by stoppage. He's got half of his wins, 23 wins, are by knockout. He's a mature guy. There's levels to this sport. Ben Whitaker's already shown, Eddie, that he's an incredible mover. It's one of the reasons why he's got millions of Instagram followers already. He projects his arrogance, if I can call that word. It's not an insult. In an extraordinary way. There is an arrogance about him, but it's born of confidence. I still have question marks at the top level about his power, but I'm sure he'll bring that and show that. He's only 8-0, and people are talking about him. He's a massive star who hasn't proven that he's box office yet, but these are the moments that can help to make him box office. So, you know, and the pressure's off him on this card because, you know, as I say, we've got this big names on the top, and there's loads of great fights. So if he can steal the show, great. But he's there for a reason, which is to build his if you like. and Cameron will give him a decent test.
Yeah, I think the biggest question mark about this card, I mean, we've all sort of had a look at the full fight card now, and I think the one fight that everyone was like, not quite sure about was Chris Eubank Jr. versus Camille Zeramata. Obviously, look, we haven't seen Chris since he beat Liam Smith. By the time he steps into the ring, it'll be, I think, nearly a year or just over a year since his last fought. That was asked about Ben as well, and he said, look, he almost knows this is not a warm-up, because you can never really gimme fight in boxing because anything can happen. But this is almost okay, you can have this one, Chris, but next has to be something serious, has to be a world title. Whether or not Chris, and I think Ben's going to fully understand what it means to work with Chris Eubank Jr. about telling him what's next and what you can do next. Whether or not Chris does that is another thing altogether. But what would you make of that? Like him wanting a world title for Chris next?
Well, what we understand about Chris in the last couple of months is there were a couple of days of rumours that he might be fighting Saul Canelo Alvarez. That blew over. We know that he turned down the chance to fight Hamza Shiraz on this huge September the 21st event at Wembley. Wembley Stadium, which he clearly didn't think positions were right for him. But I agree wholeheartedly with Ben that he needs big fights.
Yeah.
I say Zeramata has fought people like Golovkin and lost to him, Gennady Golovkin, I think, and Jaime Munguia as well and lost to him.
Yep.
And isn't really high up there in the world's governing body rankings, sanctioning body rankings anymore. So it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a gimme because it's not at that level, but he ought to win and will win well and look very good, and he needs to be in a big fight next. I really agree with that. I don't know whether they're treading water to make the Conor Benn fight with him. That could be a possibility. But there are big fights out there for him. And maybe, Eddie, given that these fights are just 3 weeks, the two events just 3 weeks apart, if Hamza Shiraz looks very good against Tyler Denny, maybe they'll build Chris Eubank against Hamza Shiraz for a big card next year.
Oh, wouldn't mind seeing that one. But again, look, one thing, and you mentioned a few names there, Chris has options. I think that's the best position he can be in right now. There are options in a couple of weight classes, guys coming up from a lower weight class that all want to have fights with him. So he's in a position where he can always be in big fights. So there are no excuses not to be. Finally, and we'll end on this, very interested to get your point on this. We didn't hear it in the audio, but Ben Shalom did say this when he joined Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. He said, aside from Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, Chris Eubank Jr. is the biggest name in British boxing. True or false?
Yeah, he is after them the biggest name in British boxing, because he is, the Eubank name in British boxing is enormous because the legacy of his father, his uncle, his cousins, but also Conor Benn is as well. I think I'd put them alongside each other. But those two are the two biggest names, probably outside names.
Bigger name than Derek Chisora?
Yeah.
Name. So yeah,
if you ask the mainstream,
like if they're both walking down the street, who gets recognised more? Chris Eubank Jr. or Derek Chisora? I'm just honest, like just put them down the street, put them down Islington High Street.
Derek's going to be bowling past you, knocking you over. I'm not going to go. I'm not going into delivery.
No, you've just got into it. You've just got into it. But it's interesting though. If you put them in a random spot, who's recognised more out of the two?
I don't think Conor Benn and out of Ben and Eubank.
No. Derek Chisora and Chris Eubank Jr.
Chris Eubank Jr. because he's going to roar up in a Maserati or something.
Yeah, and Chisora will turn up in a smart car,
designer clothes. Whereas Derek's going to be there with his Five Guys hat and I don't know. I really don't know. But I think Chris Eubank.
Yeah, no, I think Chris Eubank's a massive name, and I've always said that I think Chris Eubank could have been and still might be a big pay-per-view star. I think he's huge. I think he's got this arrogance and aura. He really is box office. And when he speaks, he speaks fantastically well. Faculties are all in place. I'm a big fan of Chris Eubank Jr. and I hope we do see him in something big next year. Gareth, as always, my man, thank you very much. Enjoy your last few days in France covering the Paralympics. Well done on that. You've been listening to Find Extra on talkSPORT 2. Remember, if you've missed any of the show, you can listen to it as a podcast. Find it under the Fight Night banner on your talkSPORT app or wherever you get your podcast from. We will be back next week.